The sun was getting low in the sky when Sarah Mitchell saw the dust cloud coming down the dirt road. She put down the bucket of water she was carrying and walked to the porch of her small ranch house. Her hand went to the rifle that always stayed by the front door. Sarah was 25 years old and had been running the ranch alone for 6 months. Her father had died suddenly, leaving her with more work than one person could handle. The cattle needed care, the fences needed fixing, and the bills kept coming. Every day was a fight to keep the ranch going, but lately things had gotten worse. 3 weeks ago, she found a note stuck to her door. It said she should sell the ranch and leave town. The note was not signed. A week later, another note came. This one said bad things would happen if she stayed. Sarah had lived on this ranch her whole life. She was not going to let anyone scare her away. The dust cloud got closer. Sarah could see it was one man on a horse. The horse was big and dark brown. The man sat straight in his saddle like he had been riding horses his whole life. Sarah picked up her rifle and held it ready, but not pointed at the stranger. The man rode up to the fence around her house and stopped. He did not get off his horse right away. Instead, he looked around slowly. His eyes checked the barn, the corral where she kept her horses, and the hills behind the ranch. Sarah watched him carefully. He moved like a man who was used to danger. "Good evening, ma'am," the man said. He touched the front of his hat with 2 fingers. "My name is Jake Carson." Sarah did not lower her rifle. "This is private land, Mr. Carson. What do you want?" The man smiled a little. It was not a mean smile, but it was not happy either. "I know this is your land, Miss Mitchell. I came here to talk to you." "How do you know my name?" Sarah asked. She kept her voice strong, but her heart was beating fast. "Your father was James Mitchell, wasn't he?" Jake asked. "Yes, he died 6 months ago." "I'm sorry for your loss," Jake said. "Your father was a good man. He had a friend who asked me to come check on you." Sarah did not believe him. Too many strangers had come to her ranch in the last few weeks. All of them wanted to buy her land. All of them said they were trying to help her. None of them told the truth. "What friend?" she asked. "Thomas Wright. He and your father were partners in a mining operation about 15 years ago." Sarah knew that name. Her father had talked about Thomas Wright sometimes. They had looked for gold together when Sarah was a little girl, but that was a long time ago. "Even if that's true, why would Mr. Wright send you?" Sarah asked. Jake moved his hands slowly so Sarah could see them. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "He gave me this letter for you. May I get down from my horse?" Sarah thought about it. The man could have shot her already if he wanted to hurt her. His gun was still in its holder on his belt. "You can get down, but keep your hands where I can see them." Jake got off his horse slowly. He was tall and had wide shoulders. His clothes were dusty from traveling, but they were good clothes. His boots were worn but well made. Sarah noticed he wore his gun low on his right hip like men who use guns for their work. Jake walked to the fence but did not try to open the gate. He held out the letter. "Mr. Wright heard about the trouble you've been having. He wanted to help." "What trouble?" Sarah asked, but she knew what he meant. "Someone wants you to sell this ranch. Someone who doesn't like to take no for an answer." Sarah walked to the fence but stayed far enough away that Jake could not grab her. She took the letter with her left hand and kept the rifle ready in her right hand. The letter was written in an old man's careful handwriting. "Dear Sarah," the letter said, "your father and I made a promise to each other long ago. We said if anything happened to one of us, the other would look after his family. I heard you are having trouble with men who want your land. Jake Carson is a good man who helps people like you. Please trust him. Your friend Thomas Wright." Sarah read the letter twice. It sounded like something her father's old friend would write, but she had learned not to trust anyone too quickly. "Are you here to hurt me?" she asked Jake. Jake looked right into her eyes. "No, I'm here to keep you protected if you'll have me." Sarah studied his face. He had dark eyes and a few small scars on his cheek. His face was serious but not mean. Something about the way he talked made her think he was telling the truth. Protected from what? she asked. From whoever is sending you those notes? From whoever wants this ranch bad enough to threaten a woman living alone. Sarah felt a chill go down her back. How do you know about the notes? Mr. Wright has friends in town. They told him what's been happening. Someone is buying up all the ranches. In this valley, most people sell when they get scared, but you haven't sold. This is my home, Sarah said. My father built this ranch. I'm not going to let anyone force me to leave, Jake nodded. That's what I hoped you would say. But the men who want this place are not going to give up. They'll try harder to make you leave. So what do you want to do about it? I want to help you keep this ranch. I want to find out who is behind the threats. And I want to make sure nothing bad happens to you. Sarah looked at Jake again. She was tired of being scared. She was tired of sleeping with a gun next to her bed. She was tired of jumping every time she heard a noise outside. How do I know you're not working for them? She asked. You don't, Jake said. But look at it this way. If I was working for the men who want your ranch, would I come here alone? Would I give you a letter? Would I tell you my real name? Sarah thought about that. The men who had visited before always came in groups. They always acted like they owned the place already. This man was different. What do you want in return? For helping me, she asked. A place to sleep and food to eat. Nothing more. And when this is over, I'll move on to the next place that needs help. Sarah made her decision. She was probably making a mistake, but she needed help. She could not fight off everyone who wanted her ranch by herself. There's a bunk in the barn, she said. You can. Put your horse in the corral. But I'm keeping my gun close, and if you try anything, you won't have any trouble from me, Miss Mitchell, Jake said. I give you my word. As Jake led his horse toward the barn, Sarah watched him go. She hoped she had made the right choice. The sun was almost down now, and the shadows were getting long. Soon it would be dark, and Sarah always felt more afraid. When the sun went down, she did not know that before morning came, she would be very glad that Jake Carson had arrived at her ranch. Sarah did not sleep well that night. She lay in her bed with her rifle next to her and listened to every sound outside. The wind made the trees move. An owl called from somewhere in the darkness. Her horses moved around in the corral. Every noise made her think about the stranger sleeping in her barn. Jake had been quiet during supper. Sarah had made enough food for 2 people, but they ate without talking much. Jake thanked her for the meal and went to the barn when it got dark. Sarah locked her door and put a chair against it. Now she was lying in the dark and wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. What did she really know about Jake Carson? He had a letter, but letters could be faked. He seemed honest, but bad men could seem honest too. Her father had always told her to be careful about trusting strangers. Around midnight, Sarah heard her horses making noise. They were moving around and making soft sounds like they did when something scared them. Sarah got out of bed and looked out her window. The moon was bright enough for her to see the corral, but she could not see what was bothering the horses. Then she heard a sound that made her blood turn cold. It was the sound of men talking in quiet voices. The voices were coming from the hills behind her house. Sarah grabbed her rifle and some extra bullets. She put on her boots and coat over her nightgown. Moving as quietly as she could, she opened her bedroom window and climbed out. The window was on the side of the house, away from the barn. If there were men watching her house, they might not see her. She stayed low and moved toward the barn. The horses were still nervous. Sarah could hear the men's voices more clearly now. There were at least 3 of them, maybe more. They were up in the rocks above her house. When Sarah got close to the barn, she whispered, Jake Carson." There was no answer. Sarah felt her heart start beating faster. What if Jake was not really there to help her? What if he was working with the men in the hills? Then a hand touched her shoulder. Sarah almost screamed, but another hand covered her mouth. "It's me," Jake whispered in her ear. "Don't make any noise." Sarah nodded, and Jake took his hand away. From her mouth, he was dressed all in dark clothes. His gun was in his hand. "How many?" he whispered. "I heard at least 3 voices," Sarah whispered back. Jake nodded. I count 4 men. They've been watching the house for about an hour. What do they want? I think they came to scare you. Maybe burn down your barn or shoot your cattle. But they saw my horse and now they're trying to figure out who I am. As if to prove Jake was right, one of the men in the hills called out in a loud voice, "Sarah Mitchell! We know you're in there. Come out and we'll talk." Sarah started to stand up, but Jake put his hand on her arm to stop her. "Send the stranger away." Another voice called, "This is between you and us. What do you want?" Sarah called back, "We want you to sell your ranch and leave. You've got 1 week to make up your mind." "And if I don't," Sarah shouted, "then bad things will start happening. Your cattle will get sick. Your barn might catch fire. You might have an accident." Jake whispered to Sarah, "Stay here. I'm going to get behind them." "No," Sarah whispered. "It's too dangerous." "This is what I do," Jake said. "Trust me." Before Sarah could stop him, Jake moved away into the darkness. Sarah crouched behind a water barrel and tried to see where he went, but he seemed to disappear. The men in the hills kept talking. "We know someone is down there with you. Send him out. Maybe we should come down there and get him." Another voice said. Sarah heard the sound of rocks falling like someone was climbing down from the hills. Her hands were shaking as she held her rifle. She did not know how to fight 4 men by herself. Then she heard something that surprised her. It was Jake's voice, but it was coming from the hills where the men were hiding. "Drop your guns," Jake called out. "You're surrounded." "What?" One of the men said. "How did he get up here?" "I don't know. Shoot him." Gunshots started going off in the hills. Sarah saw the flashes of light from the guns. She heard men shouting and the sound of someone falling down the rocky slope. "Get out of here." One man yelled, "He's got help. Wait for me." Another voice called. More shots were fired. Then Sarah heard the sound of horses running away fast. The shooting stopped and everything got quiet. "Jake?" Sarah called out. "I'm here." Jake's voice came from the darkness. "It's safe now." A few minutes later, Jake walked out of the shadows. He was not hurt, but his shirt was torn. "Are you all right?" Sarah asked. "I'm fine. They ran off when they thought there were more men with me." "How did you get behind them so fast?" Jake smiled. "I used to be a soldier. I learned how to move quietly in the dark." Sarah looked at the hills where the men had been hiding. "Do you think they'll come back?" "Not tonight. But they'll try something else. Men like that don't give up easy." Sarah felt tired and scared. "What am I going to do? I can't fight them forever." "You don't have to fight them alone," Jake said. "That's why I'm here." They walked back toward the house. Sarah's hands were still shaking. "Why are you really here?" she asked Jake. "The truth this time," Jake stopped walking. "The truth is that Thomas Wright did ask me to help you. But he also told me something else. Your father found gold on this land before he died. Not a lot, but enough to make this ranch very valuable." Sarah stared at Jake. "Gold? My father never said anything about gold. He probably wanted to protect you. If people knew there was gold here, you would be in even more danger. So that's why these men want my ranch. That's part of it. But there's more. Someone is buying up all the land in this valley. Not just for the gold, but for the water rights and the railroad that's coming through here. Your ranch is right in the middle of everything they want." Sarah sat down on her porch steps. "My father never told me any of this." Jake sat down next to her. "He was trying to keep you safe. But now that he's gone, you need to know the truth." "What kind of man are you, Jake Carson?" Sarah asked. "Really?" Jake was quiet for a long time. "I used to be a sheriff, but I lost my badge when I wouldn't look the other way about corruption. Since then, I've been helping people who can't get help from the law. So you're like a hired gun?" "I guess you could say that, but I only work for people who are in the right." Sarah looked at Jake's face in the moonlight. He looked tired and sad. "Why do you do it?" she asked. "Because someone has to. Because there are people like you who deserve to keep what's theirs." They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Sarah spoke. "Those men tonight, do you know who sent them?" "I have an idea. Tomorrow I want to ride into town and ask some questions. But first, I want to look around your property. If there really is gold here, maybe we can find it. And then what? Then we'll have something to bargain with, or something to fight for. Sarah stood up. I should try to get some sleep. Good idea. I'll keep watch for the rest of the night. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. Those men might come back. And even if they don't, there might be others. Sarah looked at Jake. She was starting to believe that he really was there to help her. But she was also starting to understand how much danger she was really in. Thank you, she said. For what? For being here tonight. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here, Jake nodded. Get some rest, Sarah. Tomorrow we start fighting back. As Sarah went inside her house, she realized something had changed. For the first time in weeks, she did not feel completely alone. It was a good feeling, but it also scared her. She was starting to trust Jake Carson, and trust was a dangerous thing when you did not know if someone would stay or leave. Sarah woke up when the sun was just starting to come up. She had finally fallen asleep around 3 in the morning, but it was not good sleep. She kept having bad dreams about men with guns coming to her house. When she looked out her window, she saw Jake walking around her property. He was looking at the ground very carefully, like he was following tracks. Sarah got dressed quickly and went outside. Did you find something? She asked. Jake looked up from the ground. 4 men on horses. They came down from the hills behind your house. After the shooting, they rode north toward town. Can you tell who they were? Not yet, but I found this. Jake held up a small piece of torn cloth. It was dark blue and looked like it came from a good shirt. Sarah looked at the cloth. What does that tell us? It tells us these weren't just drifters or outlaws. This cloth comes from expensive clothes. Someone with money sent these men. Jake put the cloth in his pocket. I want to ride into town today and ask some questions. But first, let's look for that gold your father found. They spent the morning walking around Sarah's property. Jake seemed to know what to look for. He checked the creek that ran through her land and looked at the rocks in certain places. Your father was smart, Jake said as they walked along the creek. He didn't dig a big hole that everyone could see. He found small pieces of gold in the water and followed it back to where it came from. They followed the creek up into the hills for about a mile. The creek got smaller as they went higher, and the rocks got bigger. Finally, Jake stopped at a place where the water came out from between 2 large rocks. Here, he said. This is where your father found the gold. Sarah looked around. She did not see anything special, just rocks and water and trees. How do you know? She asked. Jake pointed to some small holes in the rock. Someone dug here. Not much, just enough to see what was inside the rock. Jake found a stick and used it to dig in the sand at the bottom of the small pool of water. After a few minutes, he held up his hand. In his palm were 3 small pieces of yellow metal. Gold, he said. Sarah stared at the gold pieces. They were not very big, but they were real gold. How much do you think is here? Hard to say. Maybe enough to make you rich, maybe just enough to live on. But it's enough to make some people want to kill for it. They walked back to the ranch house. Sarah felt strange knowing there was gold on her land. It made her feel rich and scared at the same time. Are you going to town now? She asked Jake. Yes, I want to find out who owns the other ranches that have been sold. I want to know who has been buying them. I'll come with you. No, Jake said. It's safer if you stay here. If the men who came last night see us together in town, they'll know I'm helping you. Sarah did not like the idea of staying alone, but she understood what Jake meant. What? If they come back while you're gone? They won't come back during the day. Men like that do their dirty work at night. Jake got his horse ready to ride. But keep your rifle close just in case. Jake rode away toward town. Sarah watched him until she could not see him anymore. Then she went back to her daily work. The cattle needed water, and she had to fix a broken fence post, but Sarah found it hard to think about her work. Her mind kept going back to what Jake had told her. Someone was buying up all the land in the valley? Someone with enough money to hire men with guns? Someone who wanted her land badly enough to threaten her. Around noon, Sarah saw another rider. coming toward her ranch. Her heart started beating fast, but when the rider got closer, she saw it was Mrs. Peterson from the next ranch over. Mrs. Peterson was an older woman whose husband had died 2 years ago. "Hello, Sarah," Mrs. Peterson called out as she rode up to the house. "Hello, Mrs. Peterson. It's good to see you." Mrs. Peterson got off her horse. She looked worried. "Sarah, I came to warn you about something. What is it?" "A man came to see me yesterday. He wanted to buy my ranch. He said if I didn't sell, bad things might happen to me." Sarah felt cold. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I wasn't ready to sell, but Sarah, he scared me. He knew things about me that strangers shouldn't know. He knew that I had trouble paying my bills last month. He knew that my son in Denver needed money for his business. What did this man look like? He was tall and well-dressed. He had gray hair and expensive clothes. He came in a fancy carriage, not on a horse. And he had 2 men with him who looked like gunfighters." Sarah thought about the piece of cloth Jake had found. "Did you get his name?" "He said his name was Marcus Webb. He said he was buying land for a big cattle company from back east." Sarah had heard that name before. Marcus Webb owned the biggest general store in town and had his hand in many businesses, but she did not know he was buying ranches. "Mrs. Peterson, have other people been asked to sell their land?" "Oh, yes, the Johnson family sold their place last month. So did the Browns and the Williams family. Everyone is selling and moving away." "Why?" "Some people say it's because of the drought last year. Some say it's because the cattle prices are low, but I think it's because people are scared." Mrs. Peterson got back on her horse. "Sarah, you should think about selling too. That man Webb has a lot of money and a lot of men working for him. It's not safe for women like us to fight him." After Mrs. Peterson left, Sarah sat on her porch and thought about what she had learned. Marcus Webb was the man behind everything. He was buying up all the land in the valley, and he was using threats and fear to make people sell. But why did he want her land so badly? Was it just for the gold, or was there something else? Jake came back from town late in the afternoon. He looked angry. "What did you find out?" Sarah asked. "I found out that Marcus Webb has bought 12 ranches in this valley in the past year," Jake said. "He's been very busy." Mrs. Peterson came by today. She said Webb tried to buy her ranch. "Too," Jake nodded. "I'm not surprised. I also found out something else. Webb is not just buying land for cattle. He's buying it because the railroad is coming through here next year." "The railroad?" "The new line from Denver to Salt Lake City. It's going to go right through this valley. Land that's worth $50. An acre now will be worth $500 an acre when the railroad comes." Sarah began to understand. "So if Webb owns all the land in the valley, he'll be able to charge the railroad company whatever he wants for the right to build tracks. Here, he'll make millions of dollars. And my ranch is right in the middle of where the tracks will go." "That's right. Without your land, Webb can't control the whole valley." Sarah felt angry. "So he's been scaring people and making them sell their land for almost nothing when he knows it will be worth a fortune. That's exactly what he's been doing. And now that most people have sold, you're the only one left." Jake sat down on the porch steps next to Sarah. "I also found out something else, something you're not going to like." "What?" "The sheriff is working for Webb. Some of the men I talked to said Sheriff Coleman has been telling people they can't expect protection from the law if they don't cooperate with Webb." Sarah felt sick. "So we can't go to the law for help?" "No, we're on our own." They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Sarah spoke. "Jake, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why are you really doing this? I mean, Thomas Wright asked you to help me, but you could have just checked on me and left. Why are you staying to fight Webb?" Jake was quiet for a long time. "Because I've seen what happens when men like Webb get their way. They take everything from people who can't fight back. They destroy lives and don't care about anything except money." "Is that why you lost your sheriff's badge?" "Because you fought." "Men like Webb?" "Yes, I was sheriff in a town in Colorado. The mayor and some businessmen were stealing money from the town and cheating farmers out of their land. When I tried to stop them, they had me thrown out of town." What happened to the farmers? Most of them lost everything. A few families ended up living in wagons because they had nowhere else to go. Sarah looked at Jake's face. She could see the pain in his eyes. I swore then that I would never let that happen again if I could stop it, Jake said. That's why I'm here, Sarah. Not just because Thomas Wright asked me to come, but because what Webb is doing is wrong. Even if it means getting killed? Even if it means getting killed. As the sun started to go down, Sarah realized that tomorrow would bring new dangers. Webb knew that she had help now. He would not send just 4 men next time. He would send more men with better guns, but she also realized something else. For the first time since her father died, she was not fighting alone. Jake Carson might be a stranger, but he was a stranger who was willing to risk his life for what was right. That night, as Sarah lay in her bed listening to the sounds outside, she did not feel as scared as she had before. She still had her rifle next to her, and she still jumped at every noise. But she knew that Jake was watching over her property, and somehow that made all the difference. The next morning, Sarah woke up to the sound of hammering. She got dressed quickly and went outside to see what was happening. Jake was working on the fence around her corral. He had already fixed 3 broken posts and was starting on a 4th. You don't have to do that, Sarah said. Jake looked up from his work. These fences need to be strong. If Webb's men try to steal your cattle, we want to make it hard for them. Sarah brought Jake a cup of coffee and some breakfast. As they ate, Jake explained what he wanted to do. We need to make this place easier to defend, he said. That means fixing the fences, checking all the locks on your buildings, and making sure we have good places to take cover if there's trouble. You think there will be more trouble? I know there will be. Webb is not going to give up because we scared off. 4 men, they spent the morning working together. Jake showed Sarah how to make the fence posts stronger and how to fix the gate so it would not be easy to break open. Sarah had done this kind of work with her father, but Jake knew things her father had never taught her. Where did you learn all this? Sarah asked as they worked. In the army first, then as a sheriff. You learn to think about how to keep people safe and how to keep bad men out. Around noon, they took a break from working. Sarah made lunch, and they sat in the shade of a big tree near the house. Jake, can I ask you something personal? Sarah said. You can ask. I might not answer. Do you have family somewhere? A wife. Or children? Jake shook his head. No wife, no children. My parents died when I was young. I had a brother, but he was killed in the war. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. Jake drank some water from his cup. What about you? Did you ever think about getting married? Sarah felt her face get warm. There was a man once. His name was David. We were going to get married, but he decided he didn't want to be a rancher's wife. He wanted to move to the city. So he left? He left. He said this life was too hard and too dangerous. Sarah picked up a stick and drew lines in the dirt. Maybe he was right. Do you think he was right? Sarah thought about it. No, I love this land. I love taking care of the animals and watching things grow. I love being able to see the mountains every morning when I wake up. David wanted an easy life, but easy lives are not always the best lives. Jake nodded. I think you're right about that. That afternoon, they worked on the barn. One of the walls had some loose boards and the roof needed fixing in a few places. Jake climbed up on the roof while Sarah handed him tools and supplies. Be careful up there, Sarah called out. I've been on a lot of roofs, Jake said. This one is not too bad. But as Jake was fixing a hole in the roof, one of the old boards broke under his foot. He started to fall, but he caught himself by grabbing another board. Sarah heard the wood break and saw Jake hanging from the edge of the roof. Jake! Sarah screamed. Jake tried to pull himself back up, but the board he was holding started to crack too. Sarah ran to get a ladder, but she knew she would not be fast. Enough. Then Jake swung his legs up and hooked his foot on a strong part of the roof. He was able to pull himself up to safety just as the second board broke and fell to the ground. Are you hurt? Sarah called out. I'm fine, Jake said, but his voice sounded shaky. When Jake climbed down from the roof, Sarah could see that his hands were cut from the rough wood. His shirt was torn and he had dirt all over his face. "Let me look at your hands," Sarah said. "They're just scratches. Let me look anyway." Sarah took Jake's hands in hers and turned them over to see the cuts. They were not deep, but they were bleeding. She led him to the house and made him sit down while she got some clean cloth and water. "This might hurt a little," Sarah said as she cleaned the cuts. "I've had worse," Jake said, but Sarah noticed he winced when she touched the deepest cut. As Sarah wrapped cloth around Jake's hands, she became very aware of how close they were sitting. She could smell the soap he used and see the small scar on his chin that she had noticed before. When she looked up, Jake was watching her face. "Thank you," Jake said quietly. "For what?" "For taking care of me. It's been a long time since anyone." "Did that?" Sarah felt something warm in her chest. "You're taking care of me too." They looked at each other for a long moment. Sarah felt like Jake was about to say something important, but then they heard the sound of horses coming fast toward the ranch. Jake stood up quickly and went to the window. "3 riders," he said. "Coming fast." Sarah grabbed her rifle and Jake checked his gun. But when the riders got closer, Jake relaxed. "It's all right," he said. "I know one of them." The 3 men rode up to the house and stopped. The man in front was older with gray hair and a kind face. The other 2 men looked like cowboys. "Jake Carson," the older man called out. "I heard you were in these parts?" Jake walked out to meet them. "Hello, Frank. What brings you here?" The man named Frank got off his horse. "We're looking for work. Heard there might be some trouble in this valley that needed fixing." Jake shook hands with Frank and the other 2 men. Then he turned to Sarah. Sarah, "These are some friends of mine. Frank Wilson, Pete Rodriguez, and Sam Turner. They're good men." Sarah nodded to the 3 men. "Are you looking for ranch work?" Frank smiled. "We're looking for the kind of work Jake does, ma'am. Helping people who need help." Jake explained to his friends what was happening with Marcus Webb and the threats against Sarah's ranch. The 3 men listened carefully. "Sounds like Webb needs to be taught some manners," Pete said. "How many men does he have?" Sam asked. "I'm not sure," Jake said. "But more than we saw the other night." Frank looked around the ranch. "This is a good place to make a stand. Good sight lines, water, and that barn would give us cover if we need it." "You don't have to stay and fight," Sarah said. "This is not your problem." "Ma'am," Frank said, "any time a man like Webb tries to steal land from honest people, it becomes our problem." That evening, Sarah cooked dinner for 5 people instead of 2. The men talked about their plans for defending the ranch and what they knew about Marcus Webb. Sarah learned that Webb had caused trouble in other places too. "He did the same thing in New Mexico 2 years ago," Frank said. "Bought up a whole valley by scaring people off their land. Made a fortune when the railroad came through." "What happened to the people who lost their land?" Sarah asked. "Some of them found new places to live, others just disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to them." After dinner, the men went outside to plan where they would keep watch during the night. Sarah started cleaning the dishes, but Jake stayed in the kitchen with her. "Are you all right with my friends being here?" Jake asked. "Yes, I feel safer knowing there are more of you watching for trouble." "They're good men, Sarah. You can trust them." Sarah nodded. "I trust you, and if you trust them, that's good enough for me." Jake helped her finish cleaning the dishes. As they worked, Sarah realized how much her life had changed in just a few days. A week ago, she was alone and scared. Now she had 4 men willing to risk their lives to help her keep her ranch. "Jake," Sarah said as they finished the dishes. "Yes? I want you to know something." "Whatever happens, I'm glad you came here," Jake smiled. "I'm glad I came here too." That night, as Sarah lay in her bed, she could hear the men talking quietly outside. They were taking turns keeping watch, making sure no one could sneak up on the ranch during the night. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt completely safe. But she also felt something else. She was starting to care about Jake Carson in a way that had nothing to do with him protecting her ranch. She was starting to care about him as a man. This scared Sarah almost as much as Marcus Webb did. She had been hurt before when David left. She did not want to care about another man, who might leave when the trouble was over, but as she listened to Jake's voice outside her window, Sarah knew it was too late to stop herself from caring. She was already falling in love with the cowboy, who had come to protect her. The question was, what would happen when the danger was over and Jake no longer had a reason to stay? 3 days passed quietly at the ranch. Jake and his friends worked during the day to make the property stronger and safer. They fixed fences, checked the buildings, and planned the best ways to defend the ranch if Webb's men came back. Sarah found herself watching Jake more and more. She liked the way he was gentle with her horses and careful with his work. She liked how he always said please and thank you and never made her feel like he was taking over her ranch. Most of all, she liked how safe she felt when he was around. On the fourth morning, Jake came to Sarah with a plan. "I think it's time we went to town," he said. "We need more information about Webb's operation. We need to know how many men he has and what his next move might be." "Is that safe?" Sarah asked. "Probably not. But we can't just wait here for him to attack us. We need to know what we're up against." Frank, Pete, and Sam would stay at the ranch to watch for trouble. Jake and Sarah would go to town together. "I don't like you going into danger," Jake said to Sarah as they got their horses ready. "It's my fight too," Sarah said. "Besides, people in town know me. They might tell me things they wouldn't tell a stranger." They rode to town in the early afternoon. The town was small, with one main street and about 20 buildings. There was a general store, a bank, a hotel, a saloon, and a few other shops. Sarah had been coming to this town her whole life, but today it felt different. Today it felt dangerous. "Where should we start?" Sarah asked. "Let's try the saloon first. Men talk more when they're drinking." The saloon was dark and smoky inside. There were about 10 men drinking at tables and standing at the bar. When Jake and Sarah walked in, everyone stopped talking and looked at them. Sarah recognized most of the men, but they did not look friendly today. Some of them turned away when she tried to catch their eyes. Jake and Sarah walked to the bar. The bartender was a man named Charlie who had known Sarah since she was a little girl. "Hello, Charlie," Sarah said. "Hello, Sarah," Charlie said, but he did not smile. "What can I get you?" "2 beers, please." Charlie brought them their drinks. "Sarah, maybe you should finish your beer and leave. This might not be the best place for you today." "Why not?" Jake asked. Charlie looked around the room nervously. "Word is that some people in town don't like folks who cause trouble for Mr. Webb." "What kind of trouble?" Sarah asked. Before Charlie could answer, a loud voice came from across the room. "Hey, Mitchell, I heard you got yourself some hired guns." Sarah turned around and saw Tom Bradley. Tom worked for Marcus Webb at the general store. He was drunk and looking for a fight. "I don't know what you're talking about, Tom," Sarah said. Tom walked over to the bar. He was not steady on his feet. "Everyone knows you got some gunfighters staying at your ranch. Mr. Webb is not happy about that." "What Mr. Webb is happy about is not my concern," Sarah said. Tom got angry. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you can fight Mr. Webb and win?" Jake stepped between Tom and Sarah. "I think you've had enough to drink," Jake said quietly. Tom looked at Jake with mean eyes. "You must be one of the gunfighters. You don't look so tough to me." "I don't want any trouble," Jake said. "We'll just finish our drinks and leave." "Maybe you should leave now," Tom said. He put his hand on Jake's chest and pushed him. Jake did not move when Tom pushed him, but Sarah saw his jaw get tight. "Don't do that again," Jake said. Tom pushed Jake harder. "What are you going to do about it?" Quick as lightning, Jake grabbed Tom's wrist and twisted his arm behind his back. Tom cried out in pain. "I'm going to ask you nicely to sit down and finish your drink," Jake said. "And I'm going to ask you nicely to leave Miss Mitchell alone." Jake let go of Tom's arm. Tom rubbed his wrist and looked around the room. All the other men were watching, but none of them moved to help him. "This isn't over," Tom said to Jake. Then he looked at Sarah. "Mr. Webb wants to see you tomorrow. He'll be at his office at the general store at 2 o'clock. Don't make him wait." Tom walked out of the saloon. The other men went back to their drinking, but Sarah could tell they were all listening to everything that was said. Jake and Sarah finished their drinks and left the saloon. Outside, Sarah felt shaky. "Are you all right?" Jake asked. "Yes, but I don't like the way people looked at me in there. Those men have known me my whole life, but today they acted like I was a stranger. They're scared," Jake said. "Webb has them all scared." They walked down the main street toward the general store. Sarah wanted to see if Webb was there, but she did not want to talk to him yet. As they walked, Dr. Emma Russell came out of her office. Dr. Russell was the only doctor in town, and she had delivered Sarah when she was born. "Sarah!" Dr. Russell called out. "I'm so glad to see you." Sarah was happy to see a friendly face. "Hello, Dr. Russell. This is Jake Carson." Dr. Russell shook hands with Jake. "Mr. Carson, I've heard about you. People are saying you're helping Sarah with her troubles." "I'm trying to," Jake said. Dr. Russell looked around to make sure no one was listening. "Could you both come to my office? I have something I need to tell you." Inside her office, Dr. Russell closed the door and pulled down the shades on the windows. "What I'm about to tell you could get me in trouble," she said, "but I can't keep quiet anymore." "What is it?" Sarah asked. "It's about your father, Sarah. I don't think he died of natural causes." Sarah felt like someone had hit her in the stomach. "What do you mean?" "Your father came to see me about 2 weeks before he died. He said he had been feeling sick after eating meals in town. He thought someone might be putting something in his food." "Poison?" Jake asked. "I'm not sure." "Your father died before I could do any tests. But the symptoms he described were not like any sickness I've ever seen." Sarah sat down in a chair. She felt dizzy. "Are you saying someone murdered my father?" "I'm saying it's possible. And if they did, it was probably because of the gold he found on your land." Dr. Russell went to her desk and took out a small bottle. "Your father gave me this." "He said it was water from his well?" "He wanted me to test it to see if someone had put something in it." Jake took the bottle and looked at it. "Did you test it?" "Yes, there was nothing wrong with the water. But that doesn't mean someone wasn't poisoning his food when he came to town." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Sarah asked. Dr. Russell looked sad. "Because I was scared, and because I wasn't sure. But after what's been happening to you, I think you need to know." "Does Webb know that you suspect something?" Jake asked. "I don't think so. But I've been very careful about what I say and who I say it to." Sarah felt angry and sad at the same time. "If someone killed my father, I want them to pay for it." "We'll find out the truth," Jake said. "But first we need to deal with Webb's invitation tomorrow." Dr. Russell looked worried. "What invitation?" Sarah told her about Tom Bradley's message. Dr. Russell shook her head. "Don't go," she said. "It's a trap." "Maybe," Jake said. "But we might learn something important." "Or you might not come back," Dr. Russell said. They talked for a few more minutes. Then Jake and Sarah left the doctor's office. As they walked back to their horses, Sarah was thinking about her father. "Do you think Dr. Russell is right?" "Sarah," asked Jake, "it's possible. Men like Webb don't like to leave witnesses if they can help it. But my father never told me about the gold. Why would Webb think he was a threat? Maybe your father was planning to do something with the gold. Maybe he was going to use it to hire lawyers or buy protection." They rode back to the ranch in silence. Sarah's mind was full of questions and anger. If Webb had killed her father, she wanted justice. But she also wanted to stay alive long enough to get it. When they got back to the ranch, Frank, Pete, and Sam were waiting with news. "We had visitors." "While you were gone?" Frank said. "What kind of visitors?" Jake asked. 3 men on horses. "They rode up to the edge of your property and just sat there for about an hour, watching the house." "Did you recognize any of them?" Sarah asked. "No, but they looked like professional gunfighters. They were all armed with good guns and good horses." Sam nodded. "They were checking us out, seeing how many men we have and how well we're prepared." "What did you do?" Jake asked. "We let them see us," Pete said. "We wanted them to know we were ready for trouble." Jake told his friends about the meeting with Dr. Russell and Webb's invitation for tomorrow. "You're not seriously thinking about Going to see Webb, are you? Frank asked. I think we have to, Jake said. If we don't go, he'll think we're too scared to face him. That might make him do something even worse. And if you do go, he might kill you. Sam said. Sarah listened to the men talk about the dangers of meeting with Webb. She knew they were right to be worried. But she also knew that hiding at the ranch was not going to solve anything. That night, as Sarah lay in her bed, she thought about her father. She remembered how strong and brave he had been. She remembered how he had taught her to stand up for what was right, even when it was dangerous. If Webb had killed her father, she was going to make sure he paid for it. But first, she had to stay alive long enough to prove it. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a bad feeling in her stomach. Today was the day she was supposed to meet with Marcus Webb. She did not want to go. But Jake said they needed to face Webb and find out what he really wanted. Jake and his friends spent the morning planning. They decided that Jake and Sarah would go to town for the meeting, but Frank, Pete, and Sam would follow them and hide near the general store. If there was trouble, help would be close. I don't like this plan, Frank said as they got ready to leave. It feels like a trap. Everything feels like a trap when you're dealing with men like Webb, Jake said. But we can't hide forever. Sarah put on her best dress for the meeting. She wanted to look strong and confident when she faced Webb. She also put her small gun in her coat pocket, just in case. Are you ready for this? Jake asked as they rode toward town. No, Sarah said honestly, but I'm going anyway. They reached town at 1:30 in the afternoon. The main street looked normal, but Sarah noticed there were more men standing around than usual. Some of them looked like the kind of men who carried guns for money. Jake and Sarah tied their horses in front of the general store. Remember, Jake said quietly, don't agree to anything. We're just here to listen. They walked into the store. A young man behind the counter pointed toward a door at the back. Mr. Webb is waiting for you in his office, he said. The office was bigger than Sarah expected. There was a large desk, expensive chairs, and pictures on the walls. Marcus Webb was sitting behind the desk. He was about 50 years old with gray hair and cold blue eyes. He wore a suit that probably cost more money than Sarah made in a year. Miss Mitchell, Webb said, standing up. Thank you for coming. And you must be Mr. Carson. I've heard interesting things about you. Mr. Webb, Sarah said. She did not sit down even though Webb pointed to chairs. Please, sit down. We have important things to discuss. Sarah and Jake sat down, but Sarah could tell Jake was ready to move quickly if he needed to. Miss Mitchell, Webb said, I'm going to be direct with you. I want to buy your ranch. I'm prepared to offer you a very good price. How good? Sarah asked. Webb smiled. $5,000. That's more than your ranch is worth. Sarah almost laughed. If there was gold on her land and the railroad was coming through, her ranch was worth much more than $5,000. That's not enough, Sarah said. Webb's smile disappeared. Miss Mitchell, you need to understand your situation. You're all alone out there. Bad things can happen to people who live alone in isolated places. She's not alone, Jake said quietly. Webb looked at Jake with cold eyes. Mr. Carson, you and your friends are not from here. This is not your fight. I'm making it my fight, Jake said. Webb leaned back in his chair. I've done some checking on you, Mr. Carson. You used to be a sheriff in Colorado. You lost your job because you couldn't understand how business works. Jake did not say anything, but Sarah saw his hands get tight. The same thing is going to happen here, Webb continued. You're going to try to fight me and you're going to lose. The only difference is that this time people might get killed. Are you threatening us? Sarah asked. I'm explaining reality to you. I own most of the land in this valley. I have 20 men working for me, and I have the sheriff on my side. You have a few drifters with guns. Who do you think is going to win? Sarah stood up. I think we're done. Here, sit down, Webb said, and his voice was not friendly anymore. We're not finished. Yes, we are, Jake said, standing up too. Webb reached into his desk drawer. Sarah thought he was going for a gun, but instead he pulled out some papers. These are the deeds to all the other ranches in the valley, Webb said. Every family that tried to fight me ended up selling for much less than I offered them at first. Some of them ended up with nothing at all. What happened to them? Sarah asked. Bad luck. Cattle got sick, barns caught fire, wells dried up. It's amazing how much bad luck some people have. Sarah felt sick. Webb was telling them that he had destroyed the other families in the valley. There's one more thing you should know, Webb said. Your father was a stubborn man, too. He wouldn't listen to reason. What do you mean? Sarah asked. I mean, he chose to make things difficult. And look what happened to him. Sarah felt her heart start beating fast. Are you saying you killed my father? Webb smiled a cold smile. I'm saying your father made poor choices. Just like you're making poor choices now. Jake moved toward the desk, but Webb held up his hand. Before you do something stupid, Mr. Carson, you should know that there are 6 men with rifles on the buildings. Across the street. If anything happens to me, they have orders to start shooting. Jake stopped moving. Sarah looked out the window and saw men on the rooftops with guns pointed at the store. Now, Webb said, let's discuss this like civilized people. Miss Mitchell, you're going to sell me your ranch for $3,000. That's my final offer. No, Sarah said. Then you're going to have a lot of bad luck very soon. Webb stood up and walked around the desk. You have until tomorrow morning to change your mind. After that, I can't be responsible for what happens. Sarah. And Jake started to leave, but Webb spoke again. Oh, and Miss Mitchell, I wouldn't go home tonight if I were you. I heard there might be some trouble out at your ranch this evening. Sarah felt scared. What kind of trouble? The kind of trouble that happens to people who don't listen to good advice. Jake grabbed Sarah's arm. We're leaving. They walked out of the office and through the store. Sarah could feel Webb watching them go. When they got outside, Sarah saw that the men with rifles were still on the rooftops. We need to get back to the ranch, Sarah said. No, Jake said. Webb just told us there's going to be trouble there tonight. If we go back, we'll be riding into a trap. But Frank and Pete and Sam are there. They can take care of themselves. Right now, we need to find somewhere safe to spend the night. They got on their horses and rode away from the main street. Sarah looked back and saw Webb standing in the window of his office, watching them leave. Where can we go? Sarah asked. Dr. Russell's office. She's the only person in town we can trust. They rode to Dr. Russell's office, but when they got there, they found the door locked and a sign that said the doctor was out of town. Sarah felt panic rising in her chest. Now what? She asked. Jake looked around. The old church on the hill. It's been empty for years, but it has a roof and walls. They rode up the hill to the abandoned church. It was a small wooden building that had not been used for services in a long time. But it was far enough from town that Webb's men might not think to look for them there. As they settled in for the night, Sarah kept thinking about what Webb had said about her father. She was more convinced than ever that Webb had killed him. Jake, she said as they sat in the dark church, what are we going to do? Even if we prove Webb killed my father, who's going to arrest him? The sheriff works for him. We'll figure something out, Jake said, but first we need to survive the night. They took turns staying awake and watching for trouble. Around midnight, Sarah saw lights in the distance. There were fires burning near where her ranch was. Jake, she whispered. Look, Jake saw the fires too. Webb wasn't lying. He's attacking your ranch tonight. Sarah wanted to ride back and help Frank, Pete, and Sam, but Jake stopped her. If we go back now, we'll just get killed. Your friends are smart men. They know how to take care of themselves. Sarah spent the rest of the night worrying about her friends and her ranch. When morning came, the fires were gone, but smoke was still rising from the direction of her property. We have to go back, Sarah said. I know, but we have to be careful. They rode back toward the ranch slowly, watching for signs of danger. When they got close, Sarah's heart sank. Her barn was burned to the ground. Her house was still standing, but all the windows were broken. Frank, Pete, and Sam were nowhere to be seen. Jake and Sarah searched the property carefully. They found signs of a big fight. There were bullet holes in the house and blood on the ground near where the barn used to be. Where are they? Sarah asked. Jake found something near the burned barn. It was Frank's hat with a bullet hole through it. I think they were captured, Jake said, or worse. Sarah felt tears starting to come. In one night she had lost her barn, her friends, and maybe her chance to save her ranch. What do we do now? She asked. Before Jake could answer, they heard horses coming. Sarah grabbed her rifle, but Jake put his hand on her arm. Too late, he said. There are too many of them. 6 men on horses rode up to the ranch. They all had guns pointed at Jake and Sarah. Drop your weapons, one of the men called out. Jake and Sarah had no choice. They dropped their guns and put their hands up. Mr. Webb wants to see you both, the man said. Right now? Webb's men tied Jake and Sarah's hands and put them on horses. Then they rode away from the ranch toward the hills. Sarah looked back at her burned barn and broken house. Everything her father had built was being destroyed. They rode for about an hour before they reached an old mining camp in the mountains. There were several buildings that had been empty for years, but now they were full of Webb's men. Sarah counted at least 15 armed men. The biggest building was an old mining office. Webb's men took Jake and Sarah inside. Marcus Webb was waiting for them, sitting behind a desk like he owned the place. Miss Mitchell, Mr. Carson, Webb said. I'm disappointed that you didn't listen to my advice. Where are my friends? Jake asked. Webb smiled. Your friends fought very bravely last night. Unfortunately, they chose to resist instead of surrendering. Are they dead? Sarah asked. Not yet, but that depends on how cooperative you are. Webb stood up and walked around the desk. Miss Mitchell, you're going to sign some papers for me. Papers that say you're selling your ranch to me for $1,000. I won't do it, Sarah said. Oh, I think you will. Because if you don't, your friends are going to have accidents. Very painful accidents. 2 of Webb's men brought Frank, Pete, and Sam into the room. The 3 men were tied up and had been beaten. Frank had blood on his face, and Pete was holding his arm like it was hurt. Jake, Frank called out when he saw them. Don't give this man anything. One of Webb's men hit Frank in the stomach to make him be quiet. You see, Webb said to Sarah, your friends are depending on you to make the right choice. Sarah looked at Frank, Pete, and Sam. They had risked their lives to help her, and now they were going to be killed because of her fight with Webb. Let them go, Sarah said. I'll sign your papers. Sarah? No, Jake said. Don't do it. I have 2, Sarah said. I can't let them die because of me. Webb brought the papers to Sarah. Just sign here, and this will all be over. Sarah looked at the papers. They said she was selling her ranch for $1,000, much less than it was, worth even without the gold and the railroad. But as Sarah picked up the pen, Jake spoke quietly to her. Remember what your father taught you about fighting for what's right, he said. Sarah remembered her father's words. He had always told her that some things were worth fighting for, even if it was dangerous. Sarah threw the pen down. No, I won't. Sign. Webb's face got red with anger. Then your friends will die slowly and painfully. Maybe, Sarah said. But I won't let you steal everything my father worked for. Webb pulled out his gun and pointed it at Sarah. Sign the papers or I'll kill you right now. If you kill me, you'll never get legal ownership of my ranch, Sarah said. You need my signature. Webb thought about that. Sarah was right. If she died without signing the papers, the ranch would go to her relatives in another state. Webb would have to start all over again. Fine, Webb said. But I can make you want to sign those papers. Webb nodded to his men. Take them to the old mine shaft. Maybe a few hours in the dark will change their minds. Webb's men pushed Jake, Sarah, and their 3 friends toward the door. Outside the office building was the entrance to an old gold mine. The wooden supports around the entrance looked old and dangerous. This mine goes deep into the mountain, Webb said. It's easy to get lost down there. It's also easy to have accidents. The men pushed the prisoners into the mine tunnel. It was dark and cold inside. The only light came from torches that Webb's men carried. They walked down the tunnel for several minutes. The walls were rough rock, and water dripped from the ceiling. Sarah could hear rats running around in the darkness. Finally, they reached a wider area deep in the mine. There were old mining tools and broken equipment scattered around. In one corner was a pile of rocks where part of the ceiling had fallen down. "You can stay here and think about your situation," Webb said. "When you're ready to sign my papers, just call out. Someone will hear you." Webb and his men left, taking their torches with them. Jake, Sarah, Frank, Pete, and Sam were left alone in the dark mine. "Is everyone all right?" Jake asked. "I've been better," Frank said, "but I'm alive." "My arm is hurt, but not broken," Pete said. "I'm fine," Sam said. "But we need to get out of here." Jake felt around in the darkness until he found a sharp piece of metal. He used it to cut the ropes on his hands. Then he cut the ropes for the others. "Can anyone see anything?" Sarah asked. "There's a little light coming from that direction," Frank said, pointing toward one of the tunnels. "But I don't know if it leads out or deeper into the mine." Jake felt around until he found an old torch and some matches. He lit the torch and everyone could see again. "We need to find another way out," Jake said. "Webb will have men watching the main entrance." They explored the tunnels leading away from where they were. Most of them ended in rock walls or cave-ins. But one tunnel seemed to go up instead of down. "This might lead to another entrance," Pete said. They followed the tunnel for a long time. It was hard work climbing over rocks and squeezing through narrow places. Sarah was scared that the tunnel might collapse on top of them. Finally, they saw real daylight ahead. The tunnel led to a small opening on the side of the mountain, hidden behind some trees and bush. "We're free," Sam said. "Not yet," Jake said. "We still need to stop Webb." "How?" Sarah asked. "He has 20 men and all the guns," Jake thought for a minute. "We need help. We need to get to the next town and find a U.S. Marshal or someone from the territorial government." "That will take too long," Frank said. "By the time we get back with help, Webb will have burned down half the valley." "Then we do this ourselves," Jake said. 5 people against 20? Pete asked. "That's not good odds," Jake smiled. "We don't have to fight all 20 at once. We just have to fight Webb." Jake explained his plan. Webb thought they were trapped in the mine. He would not expect them to attack him. If they could get back to the mining camp and capture Webb, his men might give up without a fight. "It's dangerous," Frank said. "Everything is dangerous now," Sarah said. "But Jake is right. We have to stop Webb." They made their way carefully back toward the mining camp. It was getting dark, which would help them sneak up on Webb's men. When they got close to the camp, they could see guards watching the mine entrance. But most of Webb's men were in the buildings, eating dinner and drinking. "Webb will be in the office building," Jake said. "If we can get to him without being seen, ... "I'll go," Sarah said. "No," Jake said. "It's too dangerous. I'm the one he wants to sign the papers. If he sees me, he might not shoot right away." Jake did not like the plan, but Sarah was right. She had the best chance of getting close to Webb. Sarah worked her way around the edge of the camp until she was near the office building. She could see Webb through the window, sitting at his desk and counting money. Sarah took a deep breath and walked up to the front door of the building. She opened it and walked inside like she belonged there. "Mr. Webb," she said, "I've changed my mind. I want to sign your papers." Webb looked up in surprise. "How did you get out of the mine?" "Does it matter? I'm here to give you what you want." Webb stood up and reached for his gun, but Sarah was faster. She pulled out the small gun she had hidden in her coat and pointed it at Webb. "Don't move," she said. Webb laughed. "You think you can shoot me, little girl?" "Try me," Sarah said. Webb started to draw his gun anyway. Sarah was about to shoot when the door burst open and Jake ran in with his gun ready. "Drop it, Webb!" Jake shouted. Webb spun around to shoot Jake, but Sarah fired her gun. Webb cried out and grabbed his shoulder where the bullet had hit him. Jake kicked Webb's gun away. "It's over," he said, but Webb smiled even though he was bleeding. "No, it's not. Even if you kill me, my men will hunt you down." "Maybe," Jake said. "But first you're going to confess to murdering Sarah's father." "I'll never confess to anything." Webb said. Just then they heard shouting outside. Webb's men had discovered that their prisoners had escaped. "Jake," Frank's voice called from outside. "We need to go, now." Jake looked at Sarah. "We can't stay here and fight 20 men. Sarah looked at Webb, who was holding his wounded shoulder and glaring at them with hate. "This isn't finished," Webb said. "Yes, it is," Sarah said. She had an idea that might end everything. Sarah picked up a torch from the wall and threw it at a pile of old papers and wood in the corner of the building. The papers caught fire immediately. "What are you doing?" Webb screamed. "Making sure you can't hurt anyone else," Sarah said. The fire spread quickly in the old wooden building. Webb tried to put it out, but the flames were too big already. Jake grabbed Sarah's hand. "We have to get out of here." They ran outside just as Webb's men started shooting at them. Frank, Pete, and Sam were waiting with horses. "The whole camp is going to burn?" Pete shouted. He was right. The fire had spread from the office building to the other buildings. Webb's men were running around trying to save their supplies and equipment, instead of chasing the escaping prisoners. As they rode away from the burning camp, Sarah looked back and saw Webb stumbling out of the office building. He was alive, but his operation was destroyed. "Is it really over?" Sarah asked Jake as they rode toward town. "Not yet," Jake said. "But we won the first fight. Now we have to win the war." Jake, Sarah, and their 3 friends rode hard toward the town. Behind them, they could see the orange glow of the burning mining camp lighting up the night sky. Webb's operation was destroyed, but Sarah knew the fight was not over yet. When they reached town, they went straight to Dr. Russell's office. This time the doctor was there, and she was very surprised to see them. "Sarah, Jake, I heard you were captured by Webb's men." "We were," Sarah said. "But we escaped. Dr. Russell, we need your help." Dr. Russell brought them inside and locked the door. "What can I do?" "We need you to write down everything you told us about my father," Sarah said. "We need proof that Webb killed him." Dr. Russell got paper and pen and wrote down everything she remembered about Sarah's father's last visit. She wrote about how he thought someone was poisoning his food and how his symptoms were strange for a natural illness. "This might help," Dr. Russell said, "but it's not enough to prove murder. We need more evidence." Jake had an idea. "What about the sheriff? Even if he works for Webb, he might change sides if Webb's power is broken." "Sheriff Coleman is a coward," Frank said. "But cowards sometimes switch to the winning side." They decided to go to the sheriff's office. If they could convince him to help them, they might be able to arrest Webb and his remaining men. The sheriff's office was dark when they arrived. They knocked on the door until Sheriff Coleman opened it. He looked scared when he saw them. "What do you want?" he asked. "We want you to do your job," Jake said. "We want you to arrest Marcus Webb for murder." "I can't do that," the sheriff said. "Webb has too much power. Had too much power," Sarah said. "His mining camp is burned down. Most of his men are scattered. He's wounded and alone." Sheriff Coleman thought about this. "Even if that's true, I don't have proof that he killed anyone." Sarah showed him Dr. Russell's written statement. "This is a start. And I think if we search Webb's property, we'll find more evidence." The sheriff read the paper slowly. "This isn't enough to arrest him." "Then help us get more evidence," Jake said, "or we'll find a federal marshal who will." The threat of federal law enforcement scared the sheriff. Federal marshals did not care about local politics or who had money. They only cared about upholding the law. "All right," Sheriff Coleman said finally. "But if we do this, we do it legal. No more burning down buildings or shooting people." "Agreed," Jake said, "as long as you really help us and don't warn Webb." The next morning, Sheriff Coleman, Jake, Sarah, and the 3 friends rode out to Webb's main ranch. It was a big place, with a fancy house and several outbuildings. But there were only a few men there, and they looked nervous. When Webb saw them coming, he tried to run. But his shoulder was hurt from Sarah's bullet, and he could not move fast. The sheriff arrested him without a fight. "You can't prove anything," Webb said as they put handcuffs on him. "We'll see about that," Sheriff Coleman said. They searched Webb's house and found many interesting papers. There were documents showing how Webb had cheated other ranchers. There were letters from men in other states telling Webb how to scare people off their land. Most importantly, there was a bottle of poison hidden in Webb's desk. Dr. Russell tested the poison and said it was the same kind that could have killed Sarah's father. "This still doesn't prove I killed anyone," Webb said, but then they found Webb's personal journal. In it, he had written about his plans for taking over the valley. He wrote about scaring ranchers and about making sure stubborn men like James Mitchell did not cause problems. One entry from 2 weeks before Sarah's father died said, "Mitchell still refuses to sell. Time to solve the problem permanently." When the sheriff read this to Webb, the man's face went white. "That doesn't mean anything," Webb said, but his voice was weak. "It means enough," Sheriff Coleman said. "Marcus Webb, you're under arrest for the murder of James Mitchell." Word spread quickly through the town that Webb had been arrested. People who had been scared to speak out before started coming forward with their own stories. Several men admitted that Webb had paid them to threaten ranchers. Others said Webb had told them to burn barns and poison cattle. Within a week, the whole truth came out. Webb had been running a criminal operation for 2 years. He had stolen land worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. He had ordered the deaths of at least 3 ranchers who would not sell to him. The territorial judge came to town for Webb's trial. With all the evidence and witnesses, Webb was found guilty of murder and theft. He was sentenced to hang. "Justice for my father," Sarah said when she heard the verdict. But the best news came a few days after the trial. A federal land inspector arrived in town with papers from the government. The inspector said that all the land sales Webb had forced were illegal. The families who had been cheated out of their ranches could get their property back. Mrs. Peterson was one of the first to return to her ranch. "I never wanted to leave," she told Sarah. "But I was so scared." "We were all scared," Sarah said. "But we don't have to be scared anymore." With Webb gone and his men scattered, the valley became peaceful again. Sarah worked hard to rebuild her ranch. Jake and his friends helped her build a new barn, bigger and better than the old one. "This barn will last for 50 years, Frank said as they finished the roof. "I hope so," Sarah said. "I plan to be here for 50 years. As the weeks passed, Sarah noticed that Frank, Pete, and Sam were getting ready to move on. They were men who traveled from place to place, helping people who needed help. Now that the trouble in the valley was over, they were looking for their next job. "We heard there's trouble down in Arizona," Pete told Jake one evening. "Some big rancher is trying to steal water rights from small farmers." "Sounds like the kind of trouble that needs fixing," Sam said. Jake nodded, but he did not seem as excited as his friends about moving on. The night before Frank, Pete, and Sam were supposed to leave, Sarah made a special dinner for everyone. They sat around her kitchen table and told stories about their adventures together. "It's been an honor fighting beside you, Miss Mitchell," Frank said. "You're as brave as any man I've ever known." "Thank you," Sarah said. "All of you saved my life. And my ranch. I'll never forget that." After dinner, Frank, Pete, and Sam went to the barn to pack their things. Jake stayed in the kitchen to help Sarah clean the dishes. "Are you going with them?" Sarah asked quietly. Jake did not answer right away. He dried a plate very carefully. Before putting it away, "I don't know," he said finally. "Jake, can I ask you something?" "Sure. That first night you came here, you said you were here to protect me if I'd have you. What did you mean by that?" Jake stopped drying dishes and looked at Sarah. "I meant exactly what I said. I wanted to protect you." But somewhere along the way, it became about more than just protection. Sarah felt her heart start beating faster. What did it become about? It became about caring for you, about wanting to stay and build something good instead of always moving. On to the next fight. Sarah moved closer to Jake. "And what do you want now?" "I want whatever you want," Jake said. "If you want me to stay and help you run this ranch, I'll stay. If you want me to go so you can get on with your life, I'll go." Sarah thought about everything that had happened. She thought about how safe she felt when Jake was around and how much she had come to care for him. "Jake Carson," she said, "I want you to stay." Not just to help with the ranch, but because I love you. Jake smiled the biggest smile Sarah had ever seen from him. I love you too, Sarah Mitchell. More than I ever thought I could love anyone. Jake pulled Sarah into his arms and kissed her. It was the kind of kiss that promised a future together, full of love and hope and hard work. When they separated, Sarah asked, "What about your friends? What about the people in Arizona who need help?" "There will always be people who need help," Jake said, "but right now, the person I care about most is right here." The next morning, Frank, Pete, and Sam got ready to ride south to Arizona. Jake walked with them to where their horses were waiting. "You sure about this?" Frank asked Jake. "Once you settle down, it's hard to go back to the traveling life." "I'm sure," Jake said. "I've been traveling and fighting for 10 years. It's time I found a home." Pete shook hands with Jake. "Take good care of that lady. She's special." "I know." "She is," Jake said, "and I will." Sam clapped Jake on the back. "If you ever change your mind, you know where to find us." "I won't change my mind," Jake said. "But thank you for everything." After his friends rode away, Jake walked back to the house. Sarah was standing on the porch watching him. "Any regrets?" she asked. "Only one," Jake said. Sarah's heart sank. "What's that?" "I regret that it took me so long to realize what I really wanted." Jake walked up the porch steps and took Sarah's hands in his. "Sarah Mitchell, will you marry me?" "Yes," Sarah said without hesitation. "Yes, I will." 6 months later, Sarah and Jake were married in the new church that the town had built. Dr. Russell performed the ceremony. Since the town did not have a regular preacher yet, Mrs. Peterson and many of the other families who had returned to their ranches came to the wedding. Even Sheriff Coleman was there, looking much happier than he had when Webb was running things. "Do you, Jake Carson, take Sarah Mitchell to be your wife?" Dr. Russell asked. "I do," Jake said, looking into Sarah's eyes. "Do you, Sarah Mitchell, take Jake Carson to be your husband?" "I do," Sarah said.